invited our good friend and sister in the movement, Shirley Trevino, to compart this about the legacy of Cesar Chavez. We know she's a little wordy, so this is 6 pages of Cesar Chavez legacy. Cut it down a little. But I just, in her honor and in honor of Gordo, I'll do my best. Thank you for inviting me to speak today about a man that surely stands as an icon in our community and that has left an incredible legacy in this country. We were so fortunate that he lived in our backyard on the east side of San Jose in an area known as Sal Si Puedes. He and Helen made their home on Scharf Avenue while he worked in the nearby apricot fields. You can travel the memorial walk in San Jose that represents 7 landmarks in Cesar's life or have since been dedicated to his memory. The walk starts at Plaza de Cesar Chavez, which was named after him in 1993 to recognize San Jose as the birthplace of his struggle for social justice. From the plaza, you're led to San Jose State to the Arch of Dignity, Equality, and Justice, which was designed by Judith Baca and is taught by the United Farm Workers emblem and pays tribute to Cesar and other leaders instrumental to the civil rights movement. Then you take Santa Clara Street all the way to the Mexican Heritage Plaza, which sits on the former site of one of the first great boycotts led by the United Farm Workers. It was originally a Safeway store. Many of you here today helped in that picketing. Then the walk takes you to Cesar Chavez Elementary School, the Mayfair Community Center, that is a gathering place for the Sal Si Puedes community, which neighborhood was historically home to migrant workers who toiled in the nearby orchards and fields. You then walk to Our Lady of Guadalupe Church, a church that was instrumental in the union movement during the 50s and 60s, supporting local migrant workers with basic services and helping to galvanize community organizing efforts. Your last stop is a former Chavez home on Scharf Avenue. These are the steps you can take to learn a little bit more about this incredible man. But who was Cesar Chavez? Cesar was a man that believed in education. He said, "The end of all education should surely be service to others. Real education should consist of drawing the goodness and the best of our own students." In the 1980s, Gauss saw Gilroy and asked Cesar to come to Gilroy and speak at our Chicano graduation celebration. He came to support our students and parents. He spoke to the students and praised them for their achievement, for following through on their plan to graduate, and he praised their parents for supporting their children to achieve this important milestone. He spoke softly and humbly, and he broke bread with us that day. The event was held at St. Mary's Church, yet the celebration would not just be an invitation to speak, but an invitation to controversy. The father received many calls and threats that he should not be allowed to speak. And we were told that Cesar could not speak there because it was not sponsored by an organization within the church. Luckily, the Guadalupana of St. Mary's came through and they said they would sponsor him. And Cesar spoke to us all that evening. We must ask ourselves 25 years later, after his death, if we have seized the opportunity to also help others. Cesar was a man that believed in the power of organizing. It was Father McDonald of Guadalupe Church in San Jose that told Fred Ross about Cesar. It's said that when Fred went to visit Cesar at his home on Scharf Avenue, he would peek through the curtains and tell Fred that he wasn't home. Fred planted himself in a chair in the front yard, and one day Cesar finally came out to talk to him, and that was the start of a wonderful association. He learned the power of organizing and the fruits that it can bring. Through the CSO, the Community Service Organization, he registered people to vote, went door to door to talk to people about what their needs were, what could be done to change things in the Sal Si Puedes neighborhood. He took that organizing spirit from San Jose to Delano and organized the first successful farm worker union in the nation. In the 1930s, due to labor unrest, the Great Depression, and the employers' abuse of workers, President Roosevelt established the National Labor Relations Act. Due to the strong lobbying of farmers, the act specifically excluded farm workers and domestic workers. Cesar knew the importance of collective bargaining. He knew that it was unions that can neutralize the power imbalance between workers and growers, thus empowering workers to stand up and speak out about injustices. Union contracts can mean fair wages, job security, enforcement of safety and decent sanitation standards, and a grievance procedure that grants them the ability to complain when their rights are violated. From the 1930s to the 1970s, farm workers could not enjoy these rights. Cesar knew that the only way farm workers could be protected was to organize them and to build a union. He said, they are trying to do something about it. They're not doing it by seeking charity. They're not begging at the welfare office. They are not, like many of their employers, lobbying the halls of Congress with their gold-plated tin cups, asking to be paid for not growing crops. They're trying to do it in the way that millions of other Americans have shown, and the road to social justice for the farm worker is the road of unionization. It was here in Gilroy and the outlying areas that Cesar and the UFW came to organize workers in the 1980s. He won elections at Christopher Ranch, Linleaf, Bertuccio Farms, and many others. In 1980, the United Farm Workers won the election at Gilroy's Robert J. Linleaf Farms by 50+% of the vote. Yet Linleaf refused to honor the election as valid. They filed appeals and lost. Paul Chavez then requested Linleaf to bargain, and Linleaf refused. Linleaf was found to have refused to bargain in good faith and was ordered to make whole the employees for their failure to bargain. Shirley calculated the wages workers would have earned had Linleaf bargained in good faith. It was thousands and thousands of dollars. When the check was delivered, Linleaf representatives said that they would come back for their money, as they thought most workers would be in Texas and could not be found. The 100 or so workers were from Texas, so Shirley put an announcement on Texas radio station, and slowly the word got out, and they were able to collect their money. 2 years later, Linleaf came to the ALRB in Salinas, asking for his money, right, what was left over, and Shirley was able to tell him that all but one check had been distributed. He didn't believe us and wanted copies of canceled checks to compare signatures. We complied, and we didn't hear from Linleaf again. The UFW had won a major victory, and workers were rewarded back pay. Their vote had counted. This might jeopardize our donors, but in 1980, the United Farm Workers also won the election at Christopher Ranch. Yet Christopher Ranch would challenge the election through the courts, and in 1984, the Court of Appeals sided with Christopher Ranch and its objections to the election. The workers would not be represented by the United Farm Workers. In 1977, the UFW won at Bertuccio Farms. Throughout California, in the 70s and 80s, the United Farm Workers would win most of their elections. Cesar was a listener, and the men in the room should take heed. He listened to his wife, Helen, at a crucial time for the union. In the 1960s, there was turmoil in the fields. At the time, the Filipino farm workers, along with other workers, had walked off the fields in a fight for better wages. The Filipino organizers asked Cesar to join them, and he went home to think about it. He talked to Helen and told her he didn't think they were ready to join such a massive effort. Then Helen asked him, "When will you ever be ready, Cesar?" He joined the strike, and in 1965, the UFW called for the boycott of grapes. He said, "Our cause, our strike against table grapes and our international boycott are all founded upon deep conviction that the form of collective self-help, which is unionization, holds far more hope for the farm worker than any other single approach, whether public or private. This conviction is what brings spirit, high hope, and optimism to everything we do." It was that boycott that finally brought the growers to the table. In 1975, farm workers in California were given the right to organize a union and vote for a union. It was in 1975 that Shirley joined the ALRB, the Agricultural Relations Board. Hundreds of elections were held, and thousands of farm workers voted to be represented by the UFW. In one election in the Imperial Valley, she opened up a ballot. And the UFW box had been marked with an X in blood. Growers still resisted the UFW in challenges to elections and in court, They tried to find ways to avert unionization. There was violence in the fields. There was death in the fields. Then the UFW began organizing a boycott against lettuce and strikes in lettuce fields throughout California. In Imperial County, UFW striker Rufino Contreras, 27 years old, was killed by an unknown assailant. Several other picketers were wounded by gunfire, and one was injured when struck by a pickup truck. All Rufino workers were asking was for just one share of what he produced, and the company answered him with bullets. Farm workers were threatened, retaliated against, harassed, and injured, yet they were resilient to continue the fight for what they believed in. The United Farm Workers filed the death of Contreras as an unfair labor practice, interference with workers' rights to organize for and join a union, and Shirley was assigned the case. She was threatened and her tires were slashed, but she forged on with the belief that this case was more important than anything that could happen to us. Cesar believed in getting others to participate in change and social justice issues. He didn't personally call every student, housewife, or worker to join the boycott. He indirectly challenged us to be better people, and we answered the call. He learned about justice through injustice. He said, "We cannot seek achievement for ourselves and forget about progress and prosperity for our community. Our ambitions must be broad enough to include the aspirations and needs of others, for their sakes and for our own." In the mid-60s, while in law school, Mo Jourdain interned at CRLA in Salinas and met Cesar. After graduating from law school, Mo returned to work at CRLA, and there he encountered Cesar again. He told him, "Your new job is to outlaw the short-handled hoe." The conversation was short. Mo wondered why this was so important. So he spent one day toiling in the fields of sugar beets using El Cortito as a stoop laborer. He quickly felt the pain caused by El Cortito, which left so many farm workers debilitated. It was then why he knew it was so important to outlaw the hoe, and in 1968 it was outlawed in California. This is the impact Cesar had on many because they believed in the vision and the mission. So much more can be said about Cesar, but I want to give you a more personal view than just where he was born and the struggles he led. I attended the inauguration of 40 Acres, thus United Farm Workers headquarters, as a historical monument, and heard Cesar's brother Richard tell a great story. He said that Cesar told him that the United Farm Workers should never be property owners and that he would deal harshly with anyone who did. Richard said he saw these 40 acres as a place where the United Farm Workers could make a home. So he bought the 40 acres for the United Farm Workers. And he said, "Thank God Cesar believed in nonviolence." I remember vividly, it was a Friday, April 23rd, 1993. I was on my way to run an election in Pescadero. Flour workers had organized themselves and wanted to join the United Farm Workers. We had the radio on, and it announced that Cesar had passed away in Yuma, Arizona. I pulled the state car over to the side, but I still had to set up voting booths for workers to vote, so I regained my composure. Workers took the ballots, and they cried as they voted. The United Farm Workers won the election. In 1994, Howland accepted the Medal of Freedom for Cesar from President Clinton. The president said of Cesar, "He faced formidable, often violent opposition with dignity and nonviolence, and he was victorious." Cesar Chavez left our world a better place than he found it, and his legacy inspires us still. The farm workers who labored in the field and yearned for respect and self-sufficiency pinned their hopes on this remarkable man who, with faith and discipline, often of spoken humility and amazing inner strength, led a very courageous life.